Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to Lost in the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take an opportunity to learn a little bit more about somebody else's perspective on movies. And joining me, I have a special guest here to talk about his new film, Bound, Isaac Hirotsu Woofter. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, man. We're really excited to take any opportunity to try to get the word out about these films. You know how hard
Awesome.
it is for indie films to get out there. So anything like this is really, really greatly appreciated.
Well, and it's awesome getting a chance to check out films like this because, it's easy to like go out to a theater and see a movie that's playing like 4,000 different theaters and has 100 something million dollars, 200 something million dollars behind it. But it's real awesome to get a chance to see somebody really express their creativity and they had like $5 to their name and somehow they made it work.
I
So,
had $5. I spent it though.
now, Isaac, if you want to take an opportunity to tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into the film.
Yeah. So I'm an actor and I started acting right out of an undergrad actually.
Mhm.
And I had some success. Eventually, I got to New York City, and I get Columbia University, and I got my master's in acting there. And then I got out of there, and I did have some success. I did some stint on Broadway for a year and a half, some tours, some TV commercials and TV, a little bit of small spots in films and things like that. And eventually, about I don't know, it's about 12 years ago. I was like, man, I don't like anything that I'm auditioning for. Nothing. And I'm half Japanese, and I was probably the only Japanese person on the roster for the agents at the time. So I was going for any Asian part, and I would look at it and I was like, 100% Cambodian. I was like, this is not 100% Cambodian. So, but I would, I wanted to do good for the casting agents so that they call me back for other things that I was
Mhm.
right for. Um, and so eventually I was like, you know what? What if I tried writing something? I've been telling stories. What if I start telling some of my own stories? And I met a screenwriter once doing a reading of her screenplay, and I called her up and I said, "Hey, what do you think about this idea? Like, I'm not a writer, but I have this story idea." And I pitched it to her, and she said, "You have to finish this story." And I'm like, "Why?" And she's like, "Because I need to know how it ends, because I didn't have an ending for it." So I was like, "Okay." So I bought myself um, a workshop from a studio that she teaches at called Jacob Kruger Studio. And I took this class with Jacob Kruger Studio, very intro level. I was
Mhm.
the only person in the class that was not a writer. Like, I didn't
Mhm.
have all of the books that teaches you how to format it, teaches you the perfect structure, teaches you all of these things, right? Um, I just went in there and I just listened to, and I think that helped because I just listened to it. He prompted, he gave us exercises, and I had no filter. Like, I didn't know what was the right way to do it or wrong way to do it. So I was like churning out these
Mhm.
pages while all these other people that had gone to school, that had read all of the books, that have saved all of the cats or whatever book that they read, right? They were like not doing much because I think they were probably worried about getting it perfect or something. And I wasn't. My
Mhm.
form, everything was raw and just, but I was pummeling through. And that turned into a screenplay that got into some hands later on. But I just loved it. So I called my agents and I said, "Hey guys, I'm done. Like, I love this idea that I can continuously be creative, not wait for an audition for something that I don't want to do, to work on it for a few hours, 2 days in a
Mhm.
row, and to go into an audition and not book it because this is not 100% Cambodian," or whatever the reasoning. So that's how I started becoming a writer. But after about 4 or 5 years of pitching myself as a writer and saying, "Hey, here's my script, somebody direct it, somebody pick it up," I realized, oh man, this is just like acting. You got to make, you have to make this first
Yeah.
one, right? So I did, and that ended up being this film here. So that's kind of how my progression carried into this.
Awesome. Yeah, I've dabbled into some screenwriting and I had no idea what the format was and stuff like that for putting a script together and then got like a screenwriter's Bible. I think that's literally what it was called. And how technical and everything putting that together is, but it's awesome hearing that a story of, at some point taking charge and taking a lead on being able to tell your own stories and being able to do something with that. And especially here with Bound. Now, tell the audience a little bit about what your film is.
So Bound is a story. I would say it's a drama with thriller elements. It's like it actually kind of splits in the middle. The genre kind of shifts in the middle. It's about a young girl who leaves a broken home just outside of New York City. She finds herself homeless in New York City and with nothing except for her pet flying squirrel, a sugar glider.
Mm,
That's all she has. And she gets on her feet with the help of some found family and realizes eventually that she has to go back home to face what she ran away from in order to truly be free. Hence the title Bound. This side, this side. It's weird. It's different. It's opposite of what I am.
yeah.
So that's kind of like the story itself. The idea came about because I had a conversation with the lead actress about childhood trauma and about mental illness, and um, and I said, I want to tell a story with these elements or with these kind of darker, heavier themes, not in a PSA hallmarky kind of way at all, um, but something that will kind of hit you with a thread of hope. So it's not just like down, 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 down. And I think with the idea that no matter what kind of trauma you have may faced or are facing, it does not have to end up defining you as a person. And with the right kind of help, uh, things can and will get better, which is actually one of the lines in the film, I think.
Mhm.
But yeah, so that was it. So it's very loosely inspired by a couple events in this actress's life, which was coming
Okay.
to New York City and having a really rough go of it, and a couple small things like that. Completely fictional characters and everything else.
And I think one of the most interesting things about your film is that group of characters that she builds these connections with. Were there any particular people that you might have been drawing upon that you've experienced having connections with that you feel like come to life a little bit in this film?
Yeah. I mean, first of all the characters that I
Hmm.
create are like a subcomponent of the main character who is just really a component of me. Like, who am
Hmm.
I? I was the person that moved to New York City
Yep.
and was grinding and grinding, and I didn't have I didn't have this bad child life back
Hmm.
home. Like, I had great parenting and great family. Um, but I know what it means to feel like to get there and be like, oh my gosh, what do I do? I got to get a job. I got to get this. I got to get, all of the steps of the way, and then doing what you thought was right the whole time and still not getting anywhere. Um, and having trouble asking for help, which is something that really is this character really has a tough time doing, not even really wanting to admit to themselves that they need the help. Like that's something I still struggle with all the time.
Yeah.
But definitely each component of that, there are words that these kind of this idea of this found family that she has, this kind of mother in Marta, this father like figure in Oais, and the best friend figure in Standrick. They're all different components of me. So when I'm writing it, I see like Oais is saying things that I have said or I believe. Marta is saying things I've said or I believe. Now, I gave them all their own distinct voice and way of saying
Mhm.
it because we're in New York City. There's no better place to have a diverse
Yeah.
cast than dropping something in New York City, right? So once I got kind of that out, I was like, okay, well, how would this be said by this person? How would this be said by this kind of person from this place? And I did have a very clear vision of the Standra Claire character, which was a friend of my brother's. And I actually had him, he's not an actor, and I had him
Mm.
read for the role at a very early on table reading. And I just always had this image of him and the way he dressed and the kind of way he carried and presented himself. Um, but yeah, all of the characters are a little bit a part of me. And in fact, the actor that plays Standrick, Jay
Mm.
Alexander, who was first film, he's a musical theater guy, first film, he came and said to me, Isaac, I was asking him about the role, and
Mm.
he said, and I was saying, hey, if you want to change some words, if you want to improvise, if you want to do these things, let's try it out. And he just said, Isaac, it's like you wrote it in my voice. And I said, well, it came from inside of me. So somewhere deep down inside, there's a big black gay man. So
Well, I imagine that was a pretty special moment of being able to have your words, your story, your character really speak to somebody on such a deep level like that. And I think that's something special about the film because, like, obviously things are heightened. Not not everybody has been through something as traumatic as this experience, but whether you did like leave your home and go off to like the big city or not even the big city, like leaving home or aspiring to leave home for a bigger dream, it's like that's something very universal to people. And
yeah.
like I came from a small town, I had no interest in going to a big city, but I had no interest in staying in my very small close knit suburban town that I grew up in too, and being able to see that kind of experience. And I think that found family story really spoke to me as well because, not everybody has the perfect family life, and we all need connection in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's a really special element of this film that connects is being able to connect with others. And, you know, we obviously you're an actor, you got into screenwriting, got into filmmaking. Were there specific films from your own experiences that you drew upon that you kind of saw come up to life a little bit in your film?
There were definitely some things that either I said I want this tonally to be like this,
Mhm.
or I want it to hit like this. I like movies that. Let me back up 1 second about the found family.
Yeah.
The friends are the family you get to choose.
Yep.
So like that was kind of the found family. That all kind of ties in together for me. So I just wanted to point out that that's kind of a thing. I heard that once from a friend of mine. I'm like, oh man, he's totally right. Like
Hmm.
I don't live in the same city with my family anymore, so this is my family. But okay, so back to what we were talking. We're talking about films.
Yep.
So I like films that punch you in the gut and kind of linger. That doesn't mean I don't like fun. I don't like Dumb and Dumber or I don't like films like that. I
Yeah.
love that kind of stuff too. But I like ones that like do that and then make me laugh a little bit, make me cry a little bit, and then kind of like make me question things. So I think about films like Requiem for a Dream, for instance, right?
Mhm.
Like did you take DARE when you were in school? Drug
Yes.
abuse resistance education,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
Then you get your t-shirt and you learn about the drugs and they say don't do drugs, they're bad, right? And then we most of us go off and do drugs, right? So imagine if you were in 6th grade and they showed you Requiem for a Dream. I would not have touched a drug till maybe ever, right? I'm like, no
Yeah.
freaking way. So I was like, man, for my first film, I want something kind of in that world that kind of hits. It doesn't necessarily feel good, but
Hmm.
it might, make us think. It might make us change a little bit, or at least my goal is always so that we become a little more understanding about everybody else. So so that's the kind of that's how I wanted to feel. And then the movies like Blue Ruin really I thought
Hmm.
about just the level of tension.
Yeah.
Our budgets were very similar, these kind of fringe characters. I saw that and I was inspired by that film as well. Um, yeah, films that really hit, that really grind. We'll talk more about them when we talk about
Yeah.
films that really that and also a film that has to be surprising. Like I just don't want to know what's going to happen next ever when I'm watching anything. So, yeah, I hope that
That's
answers your
something
question.
I could definitely relate to. I'm it's funny because my wife will look up uh what's gonna happen in a
Mhm.
movie because she gets anxious.
I
And it's just
can't.
like, and I'm like, I want to be surprised. I want to be sitting in that theater and my mouth just drops because I'm just like, what just happened?
So
And
like my sorry to cut you, but like the
oh, go ahead.
production company is Paralysis Productions, right? And that's the one I formed because it is exactly that moment you described when you're sitting in the
Mm,
theater, you don't know what's going to happen, and you're just like, right? And for
Mhm.
me, it's happened a few times when I've been watching live theater and a few times in films where everything just stops and like I'm just in my own little, oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting that. I'm just, I just hold my breath for a second. And it has to do with the rhythms of the film and it
Mhm.
really has to do with something so surprising that just kind of sucks the air out of the room, which I try to implement moments like that in Bound. I feel like a film you might be able to get away with getting a couple of those moments
Yeah.
and then you've been successful. But most of the films are predictable. There's no moments like that. The
Mhm.
good person's going to end up doing the thing that they didn't know how to do at the beginning, that they learned how to do. You just know. But yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because having just finished watching The Last of Us, I feel like every single episode of that show is, well, you're gonna have one of those moments, and I certainly have had plenty of them watching a show like that. And I feel like your film definitely is that kind of film that's going to last with you. Because like this does have that lingering kind of feeling. And it's interesting that you brought up Requiem for a Dream because I'm pretty sure every Darren Aronofsky film is a film that's going to be like lingering with you for long afterwards. And sometimes, depending on how closely you connect with it, it might hit you in a very uncomfortable way. And I have
Mhm.
certainly had that experience. But I do want to share a fun little anecdote because you brought up Dare. In my hometown, we had 5 elementary schools and we all took Dare in 5th grade. And they had like a skating rink party after we all graduated. It was the first time I ever roller skated, and it was the last time I ever roller skated because I broke both bones in my right ankle. So not only did Dare scare me from ever doing drugs, but also roller skating. So there you go.
There you go. Dare to roller skate again.
Nope. I dared not. And that was how many years ago at this point. But I really appreciated getting a chance to check out your film, Isaac. And this is definitely one that it hits. And I know like that was your goal, and like you wanted something to be able to last with people and strike a chord. And I really think you accomplished that. And I would love for people to be able to check out your film. So where can people find Bound?
Yeah, so right now we're on all cable, satellite, and digital platforms, the two biggest ones being Prime Video and Apple TV right now. You can find all this information on boundthemovie.com. That's it, boundthemovie.com, nothing fancy. And we're being pitched, our distributors are pitching us to the SVOD and AVOD companies. So with the hopes of maybe getting an exclusive with them for a bit as well. So that's where we're at right now.
Awesome. And I'll make sure to put a link to the website in the
Oh yes,
description
please.
so
Thank you.
you all
Thank you.
could
Thank
go
you.
check it out. So it's definitely worth your time. Now, Isaac, I guess, are you ready for us to learn a little bit more about you and what
Yeah,
you love
let's
about
let's
film?
do it. Let's do it.
So I always start off with everybody's least favorite question, being put on the spot is, but what's your favorite film?
Okay, obviously everyone probably is like, there's no way you can pick a favorite film, right?
That
Um,
is the most
eh,
common answer that I do
yeah.
have for this
Um,
question.
so so but I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna try. I made a list and I'm just gonna
Okay.
say, man, this is a tough one. I'm gonna go with let's go with City of God,
Okay.
another film that just like punches you in the stomach.
Eh,
I was really tempted to say another two or three, but I'm just gonna go with one, City of
Okay.
God.
Which The City of God is certainly one of those kinds of films. And there's one sequence in particular in that film that is just haunting on a very deep level that just really sticks with you. And that's a kind of film that really shows that this is not an experience that most people that are going in and watching this movie have ever lived or ever had. And I think it's very shocking because it's like there are people that have lived this experience and have been through all of this. And it's done in such a intense and artful and dynamic kind of way. And I think that's why that film has stuck around for over 20 years, I guess, at this point, for a lot of people, for sure.
And it definitely is a film where when you watch, I mean, every day I walk around New York City or anywhere I'm at, and you just hearing people complain and complain and complain. Let's complain about the cops and complain about this and complain everything, right? And I'm like, you guys don't even understand. Go to a third world country and go live in the barrio. If you can survive a day or two for, let's see how you feel then when, you don't have food, you don't have water, and all you've known growing up is what they know growing up in City of God. And then and the cyclical nature of it, like it's just gonna,
Yeah.
how do we break out of it? And so that's why it's so powerful to me. It's like, how do we break this cycle, this generational cycle that just the next generation. So
It's definitely one of those kinds of films that's just going to stick with you and be like, first world problems.
yeah,
Don't worry about them so much, kind of
yeah.
thing.
You can't really
Now,
complain after you see that about anything. So
no, I'm like, I'm living my nice little uh
yeah.
middle class suburban life, and you know what? It's not that bad. So
Yeah.
we're perfectly happy. Let's turn the clock back a little bit. What's your earliest memory of going to the movies?
So I have two memories. I can't tell which. I think the first memory I have is going to the movie theater with my mom and dad and my older brother, who's a year and a half older than me, to
Hmm,
see the second Star Wars movie, which is Empire Strikes Back. And that
nice.
my mom and I left, and my brother loved it so much that my dad stayed and they watched it again. So that's one of them. And the other one is my dad taking me and my little brother, or my older brother, to see
Hmm.
Platoon when I was 8 years old in the theaters.
Oh my.
Yeah. So when people are like, can my child watch Bound? And I'm like, that's totally up to you. Like my dad took me to see Platoon when I was 8. But if your daughter's 3.5, 4, maybe wait. But like it's totally up to you but also your daughter is hearing cuss words in elementary school and all that stuff too. So like it's not that crazy. But
If your 10-year-old or 11-year-old's playing Call of Duty, they're hearing much worse.
yeah, sure, I'm sure.
Which I, as a kid, that probably watched some movies way too young because, I was shown The Godfather when I was 10 years old.
Hmm.
There's a certain level of being able to be like, that's up to you. I'm definitely going to be that dad that's probably going to sneak movies to my kids way too
Yeah.
early.
Be the
But
cool
no,
uncle. Be the
yeah,
cool uncle.
I do have one of my nephews is going to be 7 on July 5th, and then the other one's turning 9 at the end of the year. And you know, one of them's getting close enough for that Godfather age. So there you go. But I feel like it's such a cool experience that so many people have a childhood Star Wars experience going to the movies because obviously the original trilogy even got re-released in the late 90s. I had my VHS tapes of them, and I distinctly remember seeing Phantom Menace for the first time as an 8-year-old. It's just that generations of being able to have that kind of shared
Mhm.
experience is pretty cool. Now, I have a couple other favorite type questions, and I know you talked a little bit about what kind of films you're drawn to, but is there a specific genre of film that you really like?
Uh, like I said, I love everything from screwball comedies,
Mhm,
sci-fi. I love world building, so I love the fantasy worlds and the
mhm.
sci-fis. I personally was trained in slapstick vaudeville, black and white silent movie as an actor, so that
Nice.
whole world is really I love seeing it. It's very
Mhm.
rarely done. Some movies have elements of that of that world. The Jean-Pierre Jeunet films have a little bit of
Yes.
that,
Mhm.
Micmacs especially, and that kind of, there's a little bit of a slapstick tramp element to certain parts of his films. But yeah, but again, I think I like the movies. The movies that I think about are the ones that just hit me, and
Mhm.
the Parasites, the Everything Everywhere All at Once, Old Boy. These are a lot
Yes.
of Korean films. The Korean version, not the Spike Lee one
Yeah.
that gave it a bad name, in my opinion. But like Yeah, th those ones that again, boom, because I just keep thinking about them later, and or the images are just like so striking, and the
Hmm.
contrast of the different worlds that they're pitting against. And in Parasite, for instance, you'll just that one beautiful house versus their slummy little basement, and like it's just incredible.
Just that
So
descent
yeah,
all
and
the way down all those steps.
I started thinking about why, and one of the reasons why is because it hits me, and the other one other reason why is because I just fall in love with characters, not
Mhm.
necessarily because the characters are great people. The characters in Parasite are terrible. That family's terrible,
Yeah.
but they're like super compelling, and I can relate to them, and they're flawed, and da 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 da. So I have to love the characters, or I'll shut off the film. And something that kind of yanks on my heartstrings, I want to be moved emotionally,
Yeah.
which is why Bound is what it is, that kind of a roller coaster of like, I love this character, I hate this character, I love this moment, I
Mm.
hate this moment. Things are ramping up, and then this air sucks out of the room. So like that kind of thing is that where I'm having an actual experience and I'm actually engaged. And another thing of the films I love, I realize is it's not spelt out for me.
Mm.
Like I'm putting the pieces together, and I try to do that with Bound as well. So it's not like I'm saying A, B, C, D, E, F. Like the filmmaker's giving me A and D and G, and I'm filling in all the rest of the gaps. It makes me feel smart, maybe like, oh, I figured, whatever. I don't know why, but it makes me go, oh, I'm figuring it out. I'm experiencing this. I'm filling the gaps, and my imagination is crazy, uh, heightened. So you know, it's going to be elevated in that sense. So those are the kind of films I like. Um, the
I
genre doesn't matter. It could be animation.
well, I appreciate you bringing up Parasite because I feel like every single Bong Joon-ho film is like that. And I recently watched The Host for the first time, and I think it was 2 years ago I watched Memories of Murder for the first time, and
Mhm,
those films is just like have stuck with me ever since I watched them because he's just a master of doing that. And I think his first film I saw was Snowpiercer. And
mhm.
there's things in that movie that have been etched in my brain that I'll never forget that feeling that I had the first time I watched it. And that's something really impressive from a storytelling perspective. And this is an interesting segue into my next question, but do you have any particular favorite filmmakers?
Well, we've kind of talked about a few of them, the Jean Pierres and the Park Chan-wook, I think, did Old
Mhm.
Boy, and of course, Parasite director you just spoke of, and I like the ones that build that world. They have a very clear style.
Yeah.
They're very specific, and their use of imagery as well. So I think there's a lot of films that's just like a lot of dialogue, and I think maybe that attracts certain actors. I think definitely in the United States, that's how you can get a film made easier is by attaching the actor first, of course, and then the
Mhm.
actors are attracted to whatever they say and whatever they do. But lots of times it's whatever they say. Oh, I want to say some cool stuff. And but these directors and filmmakers that we're talking about, it's more about the piece, it's more about
Yeah.
the images, it's more about the action, um, and the story, as opposed to, well, we get this actor and they get to have these great monologues, or say these snappy things. So yeah. And the Guillermo del Toro I
Mhm.
love just the I think the visionary imagination of these, seeing that all come out is really just incredible.
Well, and I think it's very interesting that a lot of these examples are international filmmakers who have reached across those barriers. And it's hard to reach across those barriers with films that are very dialogue heavy because a lot can be lost in translation. But if you can make something that that barrier isn't there and something just visually speaks across, because like you put on a scene from a movie, you can tell it's a Guillermo del Toro film
Yeah.
and it's just stamp right there on it. And Jonette, I remember watching City of Lost Children for the first time and just being like,
Mhm.
what is this?
Yeah,
And just being really drawn into everything and made me want to go check out the rest of his films. And that's something special when you can watch something like, well, now I have to see what the rest of
yeah,
is in that head of that filmmaker and being able to do that.
yeah.
Now,
It really is. Maybe that's what I should do. Maybe I should move to another country and for my next film and do it there. And maybe that'll advance my United States filming career faster.
well, there you go. Um, go for that international
Yeah.
Oscar, get some attention there. Now, getting in front of the camera, who are some of your favorite actors or actresses, performers?
I like this. I like, I came up with three. Obviously, there's a million. I
Yeah,
love John Goodman.
love John
Name a
Goodman.
bad John Goodman movie. Name a bad John Goodman character. I can't. I
There
can't.
are none.
There are none.
He's
It's
great.
sometimes it's a big role, sometimes it's a medium-sized role. It doesn't matter. I love Sam Rockwell.
Sam Rockwell's so good.
He's just yeah. I mean, like him in Three Billboards, especially, like just
Hmm.
he's just an incredible actor. And then of course, I think Daniel Day-Lewis. It's an easy one to say,
Yeah.
but there's just films that when you watch and there's 15, 20 incredible actors in the scene or in the whole movie or whatever. And you're just staring at one, for me, I'm just staring at one person. I don't
Yeah.
even notice the other four people in the scene that are of super high quality, incredible performances. And, there's just something different. There's something, he's always super transformative. It really is a different person. He's just channeling
Mhm.
something different, both rhythmically, both internally, both externally. And yeah,
And especially in the last 20 years of his career, it's like he didn't make a whole lot of movies, but he made it count when he got in
yeah,
front of that camera. Daniel Plainview will always like that's a go-to if somebody asks me, it's like, what's the greatest performance you've ever seen? I'm like, well, it's hard to argue with that.
it's
So
hard to,
it's
you
just so
know,
dynamic and engrossing. And I appreciate you bringing up John Goodman because I am a humongous John Goodman fan. And I think my favorite supporting character in any movie ever is Walter Sobchak, the Big Lebowski. Because is Walter a good guy? No, but like he is so much fun, so interesting, and just like, am I wrong? It's like, no, Walter, you're not wrong. You're just an asshole. I'm like, not
he's
wrong.
incredible. That's my favorite John Goodman character. And
Mhm.
again, it's like it's not the biggest role. He's not playing the
No,
dude.
no.
But every scene, you're just like, wow. And there's one other person I have to
Mhm.
mention, and that's Robin Williams. And because I always wanted to be that kind of because Robin he was a clown, just like I was a clown, you
Mhm.
know, and there's people, it's a different type of acting than Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah.
Daniel, there's something the neurons are firing off like crazy, and it's a lot of mask work for him and clown work for him and improv, and he's really coming up with it right there on the spot. And I'm not saying that Daniel Day-Lewis isn't, but I know Daniel, I mean, if he does one film every 4 years or whatever, he could really take the time to soak in this character and build it, right? But there's something about that, you know, Robin Williams that's just like it's electric, you know.
Yep. 100%.
So
And I feel like if you were born from a certain point on, Robin Williams was such a big piece of so
yeah.
many people's cinematic experiences. And whether was his more dramatic or, Aladdin, because there's not a whole lot of performances like the genie. And very few
So,
people could even do that. like
I
at
wonder how
all.
much they had to spend to rewrite and reanimate these things when they're like, wow, we just had a team of 10 writers write this, and this guy just came in here and he just did it all better than all of them with, without any without any prepping. He- So yeah, he's just it's that's just another level that I always wanted to do too. So there was always whenever I did stuff, especially on stage or in front of the camera, I never really had the chance in front of the camera to play these great big parts where I
Mm,
can really do that. But on stage was I always like there's always going I'll have this prepped, I'll have it worked out. I'm not going to walk on stage and be like I'm going to be great. No, I do my work, but I always left room like 10 or 20% at different parts for a little bit of improv or something as long as it stays within the framework of the
yeah.
world for the play. Like I'm not going to start rapping when I'm doing a Shakespeare play or whatever, but like, yeah. So that was always like how that was I feel like I was being connected to Robin Williams in that way.
There you go. Now, what's a film that you feel like you could just watch literally every day?
None. I hate watching films multiple times. But if I had to choose, it would
Hmm.
probably be something more on the fun side.
Hmm.
I mean, I just watched Bound like 7 million times. I can take a break from Bound, but you shouldn't
Yeah.
take a break from Bound, everybody. You should watch it many times over.
There you
But
go.
um, I'm thinking maybe something like Sandlot,
Hmm.
something in
It's
that world where I can be like, all right, let's just, because I don't like watching things. I don't like watching trailers before I see the film. If I see it, okay. I don't like anybody telling me anything. And I rarely like to see things a second time. If I'm seeing something a second time, it's because I'm like, Shane, I just saw something. I have
yeah.
to give you this gift of seeing this, and I wanted to be
Mhm.
there with you because you will experience this on viscerally. That's the thing. That's really the only time I ever watch something twice, unless I'm editing a film like my
Yeah.
own film. So yeah,
And then you watch it an infinite amount of times.
yes.
Well, that's very fair. And I've certainly come across a lot of people that, it's like I'd rather have new experiences. And it makes a lot of sense you mentioning that, like, you want to be surprised. It's like, no matter how great the surprise is, like, you already know it if you've watched the film
Yeah.
for the first time. Now, what's a film that you connect to closely because it relates to another interest of yours?
Well, so before I started doing any theater or anything, I was heavily into sports, basketball,
Okay.
baseball, soccer, and football. So this was a tough question for me too. But so yeah, and we just talked about Sandlot. So maybe a sports film is what I have an amazing sports film I want to do. It was the one I wanted to do before I did
Mm,
Bound, and I had studio interest in this film, but I wrote it as my Rocky. So I was like,
mm,
no, I'm playing the lead character, which is a minor league baseball player
okay.
that has that's never gonna make it, and he's hero worshipped by his little daughter who wears eye black to school every day,
Oh,
wears his jersey, and he's helping all of these players around him get to the majors, and he's still in the major league minimum now is like 600K or something like that, and he's still making $1,500 a month, eating hot dogs for dinner. Um, and so, but I had this feel, and then he has a chance to take steroids, but he will always live the right
mm,
way because he wants to be a great role model for his child. He doesn't take it, and then he gets hurt, and now he's a year older, and his losing time, right? It's about time and what's most important. Um, so then he does. But that's what that film was about. And it got in the hands of the big studio, and they loved it. And they were like, all right, let's do it. But you're not Matt Damon, so we're not doing it for $5 million. And I'm like, okay. And then they were like, we'll do it for three or $400,000. And I'm like, what? How are we gonna do that? And they're like, we're gonna
mm,
give it to our team. They're gonna strip it and they're gonna rewrite certain stuff. So which probably meant I would lose a screenplay credit, maybe just get a story credit or whatever. And I was like, no, no way. I'm an artist. You would never do that. And then I went home and wised up and I went back to approach them and be like, okay, let's do this. I'll just write something else. And then COVID hit. And then when COVID hit, I was like, oh crap, like who knows how long
Yeah.
this is gonna last. So then I thought, well, I can't raise $5 million for my first feature, but I do think I can raise a few $100,000, which is why I
Yeah.
wrote Bound. And the actress, this person here,
Hmm.
she's the one that helped me get it in hand. So I said, I'm going to write this other film, and you can be in it. And I knew she was a good actor too. So,
There you go.
so I think a sports film, I think something like that would is how I kind of want to bring those two together. And I want to do it not, I want it wouldn't be like Major League where again, it wouldn't be so maybe like something like The Wrestler,
Yeah.
right? So that film that I just was talking about is in that kind of world.
Hmm.
Um, which is like a combination of the bound, edgy, gritty world mixed with a little bit of sports, like Uncut Gems, The Wrestler, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big baseball fan, so
Yeah.
when that movie comes out, I'll be there, ready to go,
Nice, nice.
checking it out. I'm also a pro wrestling fan, so The Wrestler, that
Uh,
was such an interesting experience watching that movie because I'm like, I had been watching wrestling since I was in like sixth grade, and I remember that movie came out. I'm just like, this is like a whole different kind of experience.
yeah.
It's like
Oh, yeah.
stripped it all the way, and then you're just like, wow, this is depressing. And then
This
you
is not
realize it's a two.
glamorous at all. I thought they were just running around and jumping off things and being on cartoon shows, you know?
And then you
Um,
realize it's a Darren Aronofsky film, and then every one of his films are depressing. So
yeah.
just hits in a different
Yeah.
kind of way. Now, what's a movie character that you feel like you connect with on a personal level?
Oh, maybe Mickey Rourke's character in The Wrestler. That kind of
Hmm.
I connect in that way of like very much so as I've gotten a chance to do what I wanted to do with my life. I was an actor, I got on Broadway, I did this,
Hmm.
and I'm making films now. I still, but in the same way that he is, it's not like it hasn't paid off on that,
Yeah,
Hollywood level yet. Um, and so and it's, time's ticking for, I'm not 22 anymore. It was
yeah.
22 with a lot of energy left. I won't say how old I am. I thank you, my Japanese mother, for being Japanese, so I look much younger than I actually am. But if you know that I saw Platoon when I was 8 years old in the movie theaters, you can figure out how old I am. So,
Do some math. So,
yeah, I think that character I totally relate to that, and and in a way, Mickey Rourke in that film, uh, doing the steroids, right?
yeah.
And it's very similar to in the baseball movie that I was talking about that called Last
Hmm.
Shot, about possibly taking performance enhancing drugs as well. And when I wrote that, I was like, I'm writing me, and the performing enhancing drugs is me writing this movie to help me get to the next level, to level up. That was my drug, was becoming a filmmaker to make that movie. So they're very, it's intertwined. It really does reflect life.
Absolutely. And I know that was such a big moment for Mickey Rourke's career too, because like he was at that point where it's not like Mickey Rourke was in a whole lot of movies at that point
Mm-mm.
either. And I was pulling for him for that
I mean,
Oscar
that's
too.
just perfect casting. It's
Yeah.
just perfect casting because you're not only the physicality, but
Hmm.
you're taking someone that's living that actual thing. And I'm not saying that, oh, I'm writing a character about a drug dealer, I must cast a drug dealer. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that, but yeah, you really can draw upon what they're actually going through.
Well, and there's a certain level of truth that you can bring to a performance if you felt or experienced some of those kinds of things, and works in a bit of a meta way for certain performances, and The Wrestler certainly was one of them. Now, Isaac, what's a film that you love that you feel like would surprise people?
I thought of a couple. One of them is Logan,
Okay.
because I mean, we've only been talking about. international filmmakers, and
Yeah.
da 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 da. And I was like, well, this would be kind of left field with Logan. Um, Part of it because I don't know why, but every time I watch that movie and when I see Patrick Stewart, I can only see my father. My father is advancing in age, but he also has Parkinson's, and he's doing his best to stay out of the wheelchair, and so I always see Patrick Stewart, that character.
Yeah.
It really hits me, and when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is gonna be a lot of fun. I love Marvel movies. I love
Logan's
Deadpool. I
not
love
fun.
Guardians of the Galaxy. And it wasn't. So hits on a deeper level, and the performance by the young girl in it is
Mhm.
incredible. And yeah, that one's a kind of a surprise for me. Um, that I didn't think I would be crying when I went to see Logan, and I was crying on multiple times. I was like, oh my gosh. And so
That
the
was
other,
one of
yeah,
the two times I have legitimately cried in the theater watching a movie.
yeah,
Um, and what's so interesting for my experience with that film too is I've been a humongous Wolverine fan since I saw the first
mhm.
X-Men movie, when I was 9. So that was a full circle moment, especially when in that movie they're watching the movie Shane, which I was named after. And the whole entire middle section of that movie is Shane. In a sense.
I needed to go rewatch it. So.
And I'm like, it was a weird moment for me because when I was in college, they called me the campus Wolverine because I
Well,
generally do have like mutton chops instead of like a
yeah,
full beard, and I'm like I'm having a strange full circle moment in the theater watching this. I'm like a huge Western and neo Western fan, and like that really brought that all together. I'm like, this is a strange experience, and I'm feeling everything watching this movie.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
but now my last question for you is what do you love most about movies?
This is the one I just realized now I didn't really think about this one. What do I love most about films? I love that they can make people see a new side of humanity and a new side of things. And that's a big thing thematically I've noticed in all of my writing is that we're not we're not good guys and bad guys. We're all in the middle. We all have the capability of doing good and bad, and we all struggle to sometimes choose only to do good when sometimes the bad offers some stuff that can really help us out. Um, I love how films can show, if we go back to City of God, again, look, this is a different way people live.
Mm-hmm.
And this is their everyday. Their everyday is so much worse than the worst day you've ever had in your life. Their
Yeah.
best day is probably equivalent to your worst day. Their birthday, when they get whatever, a balloon for their birthday, is
Mm-hmm.
so much worse than your worst day where you pamper yourself and you go to a bar or you get your nails done or something to make yourself feel better, like you feel bad and you go shopping, um,
Yeah.
to, you know. So I love the fact that it can do that. I love the fact that the images can do that and the action can do that and the storytelling can just really say open people's eyes to something outside their bubble if they're willing and want to do that. That's probably my favorite thing about movies and that it can affect me. The good ones can really make me see something new about somebody else or about myself.
Absolutely. And really appreciate that answer. And how I always like to wrap up my show is my little wild card at the end is actually like my guest to ask me a question. So, what's a question you'd like to ask the Wasteland reviewer?
Okay. Um, which character from Bound did you resonate with the most?
Interesting question. I honestly, it's probably the main character because I I was just having this conversation with somebody because I work at a college and I run a tutoring center and I teach, and I get to work with a lot of students that are like on that path to like I'm going to get this degree and live my dream.
Mhm.
And being on that path, and I asked a bunch of my student workers a question. It's like, what's your dream job? Like your unrealistic dream job? Because I was thinking in my head, I'm like, I'm a dreamer, and like I daydream about certain things that I would love to do, and like what I do here is just like a little way for me to be able to connect with my passion with film. Because like I would love to make movies, and you know I'm also a risk adverse person, so I haven't been that person to like take that kind of leap and take a chance on that. But there's something about her taking that leap and escaping situations, and like I've been in situations where it's just like I want to kind of just put this all behind me and look for something. And I never wanted to stay in my hometown, which we jokingly call the Haddon Dome, because there's like Haddon Township has like six generations of the same families living there, and it's just like who gets out. I wanted to get out. And that was something that I could really appreciate. And I have had serious ups and downs with a lot of my family. And that connection of like finding my friends who I really see as my family and I really connect with it. There's a lot of things that I felt like I connected with that journey of the main character in your film, and I think that's one of the reasons why it stuck with me so much and really impacted me. So I feel like that's definitely the character that really stuck out to me the most.
I hope that's why I hope that the characters people do connect with them in that same
Yeah.
way. Just like when I watch and I'm like Patrick Stewart's my dad in this
Yeah.
film, or whatever, I am Mickey Rourke, and that's something that as me as a writer worked really hard. And just because I know that if I'm watching a film and I don't relate to them and I don't care about them in one way or another, or I don't either aspire to be them or want to get revenge on them or whatever it is, I check out. So that's great to hear. I'm glad to hear that that you
Mhm.
did connect to that character.
Well, and it's funny because the prompt that I brought up that I asked on my student workers, I don't know if it's a generational thing because I've been working in my job for 9 years now, and
Mhm.
I kept making comments like I'm not that much older than the students, and now hitting that realization I'm 15 years older than the freshmen that come into the college. But like they're like, I want to be able to sleep for a job. I want to be able to like work from home and not have to leave my house for a job. I'm sitting there thinking like, I asked you your unrealistic dream jobs, and like this is where you went. And then I'm like, I realized I'm like, I guess I'm just a dreamer. But
Well, you're a dreamer. I mean, this is what I think about dreaming, right? I
mhm,
think it's important to dream. It's absolutely important to dream. But I think it's more important to the only thing that should be you should dream than harder. The only thing you should do harder than dreaming hard is doing the actions to make those dreams
yeah.
come true. And that's important, But I also understand that like we need to, you know, being risk averse and whatnot. And there's ways to do it where you can still, you don't have to win the lotto and get $10 million and be like, I'm gonna make a $10 million movie for the first time. You're
Yeah.
gonna probably not, that's probably not gonna be successful. So there are ways to make shorts, there are ways to,
Mhm.
level up to gain the confidence. And also you need to make your mistakes. Like
Yeah.
we made so many mistakes on this film and I had to just keep fixing them, keep fixing them, keep fixing them. And sometimes that costs money. It either costs money or it costs me my time, one of those two things. So um, this was a very ambitious project for a first time filmmaker with the amount of stuff that we did, from tree houses to sugar
Hmm.
gliders to the amount of
Hmm.
locations to getting some, not name actors, but actors that are not like a bunch of people that would do it for free, and
Yeah.
using unions and da 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 da. We built a rain machine for like $100, and I was like, this may
Nice.
work. We might just soak ourselves. We might electrocute ourselves. Who knows? We'll find out. So like, but you should, they're all different levels, and maybe it's at least by dreaming. If you didn't dream, you wouldn't be talking with me right now and having this amazing collection behind you and still being connected with film. You'd just be like, oh, great, I'll just watch whatever, and just work my job. So like, don't stop dreaming, and then baby steps sometimes.
There you go. Well, Isaac, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. And hopefully, everybody out there goes check out Bound. You'll get the information in the
Yeah.
description on the video. But thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shane. Such a great pleasure to be here. And thank you, the Wasteland reviewer.
Thank you. And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.